Hey, Jim, we're ready.
Thank you. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is 6:01. It is Tuesday, July 23rd. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting at Forest. And like I said, the meeting is now to order at 6:01. Randy, I guess I'm looking at you, or can you do no roll call?
Noted.
I think we have a full house right now. Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance. Doug, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Next is item number 3, approval of the minutes. We have 2 minutes in front of us. One is May 28th and one is June 25th, all in this year. Is there any comments or motions on the minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept them. Do you want separate motions?
Whichever you want to do.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept both minutes.
Thank you, Doug. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Shannon. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And then item number 4 is appearance before the commission. And I'm going to note that there is no other public hearings on the action items. So if anybody is wishing to speak to the commission, they'll have to do it under item number 4. And I do have 3. That is right? Yeah, there's no public hearings. I do have 3 people wishing to speak. Right now, the order is Rebecca Witherspoon, John Lamanick. Can you pronounce that? We'll get to it. And then William Landgraf. So Rebecca, would you like to come up now? And please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Witherspoon. I reside at 639 Constitution Lane. I'm here in regard to agenda item 5.1. First and foremost, I want to state that my hope is that Penn Seekers succeeds. It's here. We need to make sure it succeeds. But like most people, I recently learned that Penn Seekers driving range was built approximately 15 yards or 45 feet shorter than was agreed to and approved in the FDP. I am aware of no formal amendments to the FDP prior to the building of the driving range to allow for a shortened field. The developer knew the requirements and chose to build the field shorter than agreed to and approved. The village engineer is not authorized to amend agreements or FDPs entered into between a developer and the village board or officially passed by a majority of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The developer's excuse, that is, that it was somehow confused about what was required, rings a bit disingenuous at best, as it had no official village board or planning and zoning amendment changing the terms of the agreement. The developer entered into a legal contract with this village that includes certain requirements in order to receive TIF. One of those requirements was and remains how long the driving range was to be built. The developer chose to build the driving range shorter than required. The shortened field, together with nets shorter than the recommended in a ball trajectory study, has resulted in golf balls escaping the nets and creating a very dangerous hazard to those driving in the adjacent interstate. While the developer may believe its potential liability exposure is not enough to warrant the expenditure to mitigate the risk, that does not absolve it of all liability should a tragedy occur. We are just one escape ball away from a life-threatening disaster. That one has not yet occurred is a miracle, as numerous escape balls have traversed across multiple lanes on the interstate. The developer agreed to and knew the requirements of the FDP, chose to build a shorter field, and now is complaining about needing to bring its development into compliance in order to receive TIF. It is not the fault of the village that a disruption in the revenue of the business for a brief period of time may occur in order to bring the development into full compliance with the terms of the agreement, which would also help reduce the very real hazard of escape balls. I oppose the requested amendment. The last time an amendment was requested by this developer, it was narrowly approved by the village board, and numerous board members clearly stated that future requests would not be favorably received. If the village and its residents cannot rely on the clear terms of legal and binding agreements, then what can we rely on? What kind of message are we sending to future developers when we allow this developer to default on the terms of a legal binding agreement and still give it nearly $1 million in TIF? What incentive is there for future developers to abide by the clear terms of legal agreements? I respectfully request the commissioners to hold this developer to the clear terms of their agreement, vote no to the requested amendment, and require the developer to either bring the development into compliance or lose the TIF. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. John? Yeah, Lamakusa?
It's been American now. Sicilian names are changed at Ellis Island.
Thank you, John. If you could state your name and address for the record, and then we'll start the 3 minutes.
I have my props. Professors always have to have their. Good evening. My name is John Lamancusa. I'm a resident of 7736 Indigo Drive. I'm glad I'm not in your shoes, commission members. You get to make these important decisions that affect people's lives, and they give you all of 2 days, nice of them, to review hundreds of pages of boring information. During my 30+ years in the classroom, I had a lot of chance to go through boring reports and correct them. I hope that experience will help you now making a more informed decision. I come here as a private citizen. I've waived my usual consulting fee that I get for testifying on this because of my concern for public safety. I was here in April speaking on the same issue. After that meeting, I agreed to back off and allow mitigation methods to try to take effect. But now in this packet, I see data, and engineers just love data. We just love that stuff, numbers. I see an attempt, maybe unintentional, to mislead this commission. You are being asked to forgive this behavior, and I cannot stand idly by. I too do not want to shut down pin seekers, but I seek a reasonable solution that will improve public safety. With one minor modification, I could support the proposed resolution. Please allow me to explain. Specifically, 1, the data presented by pin seekers on page 51 of your agenda packet, which I think you all went through, right? Presents the percentage of balls over the net. There's a calculation error. Someone who did that doesn't know how to calculate percentage. So their answers are off by a factor of 100, which make them look much more palatable. Second, despite mitigation measures, the data shows that ball trespass has increased. It has not decreased. 3, all drivers should be prohibited on the 3rd level. One of the measures that they have tried to put in place, they have removed drivers from the 3rd level in the hopes that that would keep people from hitting over the net. But their patrons have caught wind of this and bring their own drivers, so that prohibition has been watered down. So the one modification that I'm requesting or asking you to consider of this in what you're deliberating is that all drivers, not only the ones provided by pin seekers, but the ones supplied by their customers, should be prohibited on the 3rd level. That third level is 30 feet tall. It gives them that ball's a 30-foot advantage over the fence. And the fourth is the computerized tracking system they have undercounts the balls. I personally did an experiment, collected balls from the field. They're here. I collected 22 balls in 2-month period from the field south of the fence. Their tracking system says 2. So I guess these do not exist.
Thank you, John.
So thank you.
Thank you for your time and comments.
Any questions?
That will be during discussion. Thank you, John. Bill, you're up next. And Bill, your name.
Bill Landgraf, 115 East Elm Street, DeForest. I'll try not to touch on the previous two speakers' comments. Let's start with the least important, the history. Number 2, bird flight study. It says they did it. There was never one done. There was discussion at the board level. My mistake was not getting a vote on it. There was never any bird flight study or bird safety study on the heights of the nets. The safety of the public is being asked to be compromised by junk data. A study by Tanner Consulting wasn't presented to you or the village board when we decided to allow this to happen. And it's in your packet, the little trajectory balls. It's funny, it doesn't say the south side. It says left and right. Why not the south side? That's the issue tonight. This data wasn't available. It came to my attention January or February of this year when Professor requested it. And it's startling because in Pinseeker's comments, the one bullet point, it says the drivers aren't going to be allowed on the 3rd floor provided by Pinseekers. I was out there the other day and people are allowed to bring their own drivers out and go off the 3rd floor. There isn't much difference. Well, the difference is the drivers that would be provided by Pinseekers are in the most part junk. The golf clubs brought by people that I saw, I mean, their bag probably cost $500. One driver can cost anywhere from $6,000 to $1,000. And those are capable of hitting the ball farther and farther. There's been great advances. So I echo John's statement about eliminating all drivers off the third deck. There's also a trick. If you look at Facebook, people, they lowered the tees, but you can still stick a dollar bill in there rolled up. So it raises the tee up and you get the loft more of it. Yes, the numbers are increasing. I've been out there and seen the balls along the interstate and balls to the southeast side. In conclusion, all it takes is one ball to hit somebody, a vehicle, and cause a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Sorry for that pause. I was writing some notes. Before I move on to the next agenda item, I just ask if there's anybody else online or in the audience that wishes to speak, to please raise their hand or make a note now before we move on. Seeing none, I will move on to item number 5 and actually 5.1. Discussion and action on a resolution to amend the final development plan for a golf-oriented entertainment complex, Pin Seekers, on 14.75 acres within the Conservancy Place Plan Unit Development, PUD. Guess I'm looking at staff. I'm assuming Mark's gonna lead the discussion off.
Lucky me.
Thank you.
We, just to give a brief history of how we got to where we are tonight. The citizen indicated that the number of polls seemed to be one fewer than what the original plans submitted with the final development plan suggested. Village staff went out and, rather than measure polls, measured distance, and did in fact find that the length of the range was about 45 feet or 15 yards shorter than what was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission in November of 2021. We provided the applicant or the owner with the option to either extend the range or to come and ask for an amendment from the same body that approved the FDP to that approval. They elected to request the amendment, and that's why we're here tonight. I'm going to go through the report, but I'm particularly going to focus on the resolution. So the report was prepared by a team of us, staff, everyone here, plus the village engineer on your staff and consultant team. It runs through what I just mentioned on why we're here tonight. Some of you may have followed this very closely. Some of you may not have followed it at all. So we thought providing a history of how we got to where we are tonight was important to you all. So the information from on the first couple of pages does that. We did include the ball flight study that we didn't get until this January. And we did include the data on ball trespass that's been referenced, and that's in your packet as well. I won't belabor it. We have a response to why the nets are where they are. We can go back in the past if we need to, but we just thought we'd put it there. I didn't intend to spend more time on that. As we looked at the issue of range length, we felt collectively that it was fair to talk about the issue of ball trespass in general as part of the final development plan consideration. So you might say we expanded the reach of this final development plan to consider all ball trespass issues that are or have occurred. The report goes on to describe that, at this time, the owner is not interested in increasing the height of the nets or extending the length of the nets. So we kind of sit here, with some options. There have been mitigation measures put into place. They seem to have had an impact on the ball flight issue and trespass issue there. But clearly in the last month, the trespasses have gone up. I don't know why. It could be the hot, humid weather. It could be that people are putting dollar bills under tees. I don't know why. I don't run the facility. We thought about, well, as we recommend things to you, should we be recommending that the nets go up higher? Should we be recommending that balls that are used be changed to lower flight balls that are common in the golf range industry? The way our resolution kind of is framed and the way we've kind of looked at this issue is, let's identify what the most significant concern is, and it's been raised here tonight. It's balls that would go on to the interstate travel lanes, potentially interfere with someone driving their car and cause harm. we don't operate a golf range. We're not golfers. We don't know precise lofts of tees. We felt that in our recommendation, we set a performance standard. And that performance standard is no more balls on the interstate travel lanes. And you keep the measures in place that you're doing. And if there are balls continue to be found in the travel lanes, then other mitigation measures need to be put into place to make it stop happening. You know, that could be raising the nets. It could be changing the balls. It could be something that, you know, we don't know about. Could be removing drivers from the third level, as was suggested tonight. But the idea with the resolution, which I'd like to go to now, is to leave some of that up to them. So a lot of history here. We thought it would be a good idea. Hopefully this is the last time we talk about this, but suggesting that it might not be, we thought we'd put some history in the resolution explaining how we got here and, you know, what some of the issues are. And, you know, Al Reuter can speak for himself, but his advice is that, hey, we need to kind of focus on this issue of golf balls on the interstate as our primary concern. The be it resolved clause on the resolution is the most important part of it. It suggests the requirements associated with their continued operation. First off, there's number one. What number one suggests is that they operate their facility in accordance with all the latest plans that they've prepared and submitted. This is the same list as was approved by the commission back in November 2021. But as you can see, there's some plan dates that are updated because we did continue to get refinements of plans, which is very common after planning and zoning commission approval. This would, if approved as presented, allow the net length to continue as is, at least for now. The recommended condition number 2 echoes and formalizes the mitigation measures that to date the owner has voluntarily implemented at our recommendation, at staff's recommendation, to try to address the issue. They're written a little bit tighter than the proposal in order to, I guess, suggest implications to people who do especially intentionally hit golf balls over the net. And we can talk about these in additional detail. Number 3 is the key, and I think it's easy to kind of misunderstand, so I want to make sure I go through it. So if we find that implementation and, you know, strict enforcement of these measures up here in number 2 don't solve the problem, and again, the problem being not balls that go over the net, but balls that go over the net and onto the interstate. If that doesn't work, then it says the owner shall implement and maintain additional mitigation measure or measures to prevent recurrence of that situation, balls on the interstate travel lanes. And then it gives a couple things that might be effective as examples, including replacing current golf balls with limited restricted flight range balls, or other measures. And of those other measures, if pin seekers were to decide, hey, we're going to raise these nets to 300 feet, they could do that only by coming back to you all. Because as we looked at the final development plan 3 years ago, keeping balls in the nets was important, no doubt, and remains important. But other considerations of people that were concerned about the project included the aesthetic impacts of the nets. I mean, I drove up 51, I can see the nets 20, 30, 40 feet higher. You'd see more of them at more of the time. And there were concerns about birds getting caught in nets. And were we interfering with migration patterns? So those were all things that came up during the initial review, in addition to keeping balls in the range. So the idea with that second part of condition 3 is if, there was a significant change to the facility, physical change to the facility, particularly net, increase above 20 feet higher than they are right now, that they'd have to come back to this body first for that type of action. We looked at, hey, maybe you should just implement the limited restricted flight range golf balls now. I can tell you, doing some research on those, there's no like single industry standard as to what a limited restricted range ball is. You can get some that perform very well and get some that perform very poorly. So it became difficult to kind of set a specific, you must do this limited range, and then, wipe our hands at the situation. So we thought it'd be best just to back off from any specific mitigation measures and provide the performance standard, no balls on the interstate travel lanes, and you guys figure it out. Condition 4, pretty dull. It basically, again, restates things that were part of the original final development plan approval. The idea being that this resolution then could completely replace that old final development plan approval. So we wouldn't have to triangulate between two documents going forward. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions about those items as well. I think with that, I'll close and see if anyone else on our staff team wants to add anything, or I'm sure we're all available for questions then too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, we got Alan, Bill, Brandy, Rachel. Anything to add at this point? Yep, it's all commissioners. Jean?
Mark, so item number 4, that's just repeating what was on the prior one.
Yes,
So what we're doing is we put that in and then this becomes the most current. So item 4 is just taking what we had approved before and putting it all in.
there is no change to item 4 from what was approved by the commission in November of 20.
I just wanted to clarify. That's what I thought. Thank you.
And what number 1 is essentially the same. It just kind of updates all the plans so that everyone is looking at the latest plans.
Anything else, Jean?
No.
Shannon?
Number 3, you talk about monitoring of golf balls possibly going over. Who's going to be doing the monitoring?
Well, it's the village's, I'll just start by saying it's the village's approval. It would be the village's responsibility to enforce the standard if it wasn't
Okay.
enforced.
Anything else, Shannon? Lisa and then Mike?
I have a couple of questions. Professor Lamancusa presented us with some studies and analysis, and I wondered if there's any more clarity that Professor has for us with regards to the figures presented.
Professor, just a second, please. Can you ask a more specific question?
On the executive summary, you did present a bucket of balls with regards to percentages of balls over the net, and you have a figure 1 does seem to indicate a significant amount of increased trespass. You could elaborate on the study that you performed on that analysis. And it seems to also carry over to figure 2, well, and again, figure 3. If you could just elaborate, if you have any commentary specific to that.
So it seems like, Lisa, you're just asking how he collected or how he came up with numbers that are different
I
than.
mean, it sounds like he collected it in person and I'm curious on your collection methods and anything else you would like to elaborate on with regards to collection and percentage of deviation.
Can you explain how you collected the balls, Professor?
Sure. First of all, figure 1 in your handout is a data plot from the numbers in the table. Dealing with numbers all my life, it's hard to see trends in numbers. So I actually plotted the data so you can visualize what's going on over time in terms of the percentage balls going over the nets. And like I said before, that percentage value in the report is miscalculated. It's off by a factor of 100. Just to put it in context, about 4.5 balls per average are going over the nets every day. 2.5 balls per day are going over the nets in the direction of the highway.
Professor, can you tell me how you collected and how you came up with those numbers?
Those numbers that I just presented are directly from the data presented on page 51 of your agenda packet.
Okay.
Okay. In terms of the balls that I collected, I physically went in the adjacent field south of the nets on 4 different occasions and found balls. Documented them with photographs, counted them, and in a 2-month period, I collected 22 balls. In the same time period, their automatic computerized tracking system says only 2 should have existed. So my contention is, based on my engineering experiences, I don't trust their computerized tracking system, nor should you. So all these remediations and actions that you're talking about are based on potentially flawed data. By their own literature, they admit on their webpage that the tracker can lose sight of a ball if the camera loses sight of a ball. This can happen in low light, mist, rain, and they don't shut down the facility when it's raining or misting.
Professor, I apologize, but Lisa, I think you answered Lisa's question.
Did I answer your question, Lisa?
It did answer my question. Thank you. I was
Okay.
curious about specifically that data.
Thank you for the opportunity to clarify.
Thank you. Any other questions, Lisa?
Thank you.
No, so Mike, you were next.
I did. And I'm not sure who to address these to, so I guess I'll address them to Mark.
Why not?
Sure. So back when this development was first brought into the village, was the village, did the developer have any kind of a professional designer on board or any such entity that is expert to the design of the type of facilities specific to range and netting?
I believe so, yes.
As I went through the drawings, I couldn't make head nor tails out of the sheets as far as trying to figure that out, but I couldn't find one. But what you're saying is there was some professional range consultant on board.
Correct.
So I have a question with Mr. Reuter. Can you define what the risk to the village is on this situation? Specific to balls going over the net, either in any direction? Is it the village's problem or is it the developer's problem?
Well, it's certainly primarily the developer's problem. Village is, and the Plan Commission and the Village Board are generally immune from administrative and legislative decisions that they make, such as zoning decisions. There is a very narrow exception to that. And that's in a situation where the danger is so obvious and imminent that there's no discretion to do nothing. Okay. I can tell you the cases that have involved that exception are pretty outrageous cases. In this case, I don't see that being an issue at all with the south or the east side of the netting. I would consider it an issue on the west side if we had evidence that balls were actually creating a significant danger on that side. We know balls are going over the net, but there's a significant right of way between the fencing to the property line to the actual paved portion. So if those balls are being hit over the fence at a high angle, which I suspect they are, they're probably dropping at a sharp angle, landing in that tall grass, and may never make it to any place where they could affect anybody. We do know that some balls have made it onto the pavement, but we don't know how they made it onto the pavement. We haven't received any complaints from the State Patrol, other than, you know, they responded to a complaint and said we found some balls, I think 3 balls on the concrete. But we don't have any reports from the State Patrol that the balls are actually bouncing on the concrete or hitting cars on a fly, or the type of thing that would be a significant danger. So based on what we've seen over the last 2 years or whatever they've been operating, I can't say that there's a risk to the village from doing nothing at this point, if that were your decision. Like I say, if you were telling me that 2.5 balls were going over that net and hitting windshields, I would say, yeah, you definitely have to do something. But absent that kind of information, I don't think that you would be out of line regardless of what you do with this amendment.
Thank you. That answers that question. I guess I'll go back to one more from Mark. That professional, was it at any village meetings?
I don't believe so. It's 3 years ago.
Do we know what
don't
those
believe they were.
recommendations were? And do we know if the design actually incorporated that person's or that company's recommendations / requirements?
So the history talks a little bit about this, but in summer of 2021, it's great times. We had a conditional use permit request for this project. That was the first step, formal step. That conditional use permit application had a proposed net height of 160 feet. That was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission in July. In September, we had a set of structural plans for the nets that had basically 2 options, keeping it at 160, sort of honoring the approved conditional use permit, or going to 180. So at that point in time, you know, it could have gone, you know, I suppose either way.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Anything else, Mike?
Probably, but I'm not thinking of one right at the moment.
Okay. Anybody else at this time? Lisa and then Colleen.
We had some citizen input from,
Lisa, can you pull the mic closer?
sorry, we had some citizen input from Rebecca Witherspoon with some concern, not only for legal contract, reneging on a legal contract and liability exposure, but also I just want to be clear, we are only voting based on safety and liability concerns. She mentioned a TIF agreement. The developer is still able to get their TIF dollars regardless of tonight's vote when the FDP is complied with. Am I understanding that?
I'm assuming that can Bill or Al answer that question.
Yeah, so one of the conditions, and the only condition that has not yet been met by the developer in order for the village board to issue the municipal revenue obligation, which authorizes the payment of the annual payments through the tax increment agreement, or the development agreement that authorizes it, is that all improvements shall be constructed in accordance with all state, federal laws and regulations, all village ordinances, and the site plan approved by the village pursuant to its zoning code. So therefore, currently as it stands, as the driving range and the nets are short, that is not complied with. Should the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the P amendment that would bring it into compliance, therefore developer would have met the agreement requirements.
So they can still receive it as long as they comply with the safety requirements that are agreed to. It sounds like that would.
As long as they meet the site plan requirements.
Okay, thank you.
And site plan equals final development plan. They're basically analogous here.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Anything else, Lisa? Colleen? Yep. Colleen, you're next.
Just a couple of things. Unfortunately, my iPad will not go up to page 51. I had to do this on my full computer at home. I'm just curious, the data Mr. Lemansky says does not match pin seekers. It would seem like you needed to have access to their system. Is that correct? It's not on the record if it isn't via microphone.
On that table, there is a row that says percentage of balls over the net. That row is calculated incorrectly.
Oh,
It's off by a factor of 100, so they added 2 extra zeros in there, which make it look a whole lot more nice. So that's my point.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Mr. Ranget is in the audience. Is he going to speak or take questions or?
I'm assuming he's here to answer questions. If anybody has a question of him, you can have him come up to the microphone like John says. Do you have a
Yes,
question? or-
please.
What is your question?
My question is, what is I know you've done some things. Obviously, it's not working because balls are still going over the nets. What is your plan to make sure that doesn't happen anymore?
Ryan, could you state your name and address for the record?
Sure, Ryan Ranget, 1105 Parkview Circle. Inevitably, there's always an opportunity for a golf ball to go over the net. Even on a limited flight golf ball, even reducing drivers, there's always an opportunity for a customer or guest to do something that is out of character that will put that golf ball over the net. So our opportunity is to make sure that we're putting plans in place to reduce that as much as we possibly can. And so we've done some mitigation in order to do that. And we continue to work in trying to improve. Where you see the golf balls high in June, we also had 100,000 more golf balls hit than we typically did in May. So yes, the percentage potentially could be higher. When he says he has 21 golf balls on the south side of the net, there are golf balls that can be pushed outside of the net, and he would probably, I'm not going to say probably, that's the wrong way to do it. There's a potential that he was on private property when he was collecting those golf balls. Either way, I'm not going to here to judge that, but that is an opportunity where if you're picking golf balls there and the net goes up a couple feet on the backside so you can clear them up, they can easily get outside of the net no matter what. So that is an opportunity for us to remove snow and make sure that we're getting it out of the playing field. So my data, I'm just providing the information that the system is telling me, right? The system told me there's 2 golf balls that fly over. It tells me each individual exact point of where that golf ball went over. And it tells me the height of where the golf ball goes over. So you can see, yes, there are a couple of golf balls that go outside the net that are extremely high, that the potential, the risk is there. But as a percentage, I mean, it's almost zero, right? If you're having thousands and thousands of golfers through there in a month and one person does that, there is an opportunity there, but we are trying to reduce that as much as we can. So in my aspect, when we remove drivers, I actually spent $16,000 on brand new tailor-made drivers to give the best product we possibly could to our customers. And we, as working with the village, decided against that. And so I had to eat that cost to help, again, for the safety and the aspect. I'm in the exact same position as everybody else. I don't want golf balls to go over the net. I'm trying to be safe as I possibly can. I don't want to get sued. I don't want anybody to get injured. So that is something that we continuously work on as a group and my team to make sure we have the ultimate safety as we can.
Seems like
So-
raising the nets would solve that problem.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Would appear raising the nets higher would solve that problem.
I mean, I would disagree. I would think that if you go across the country and look at other facilities, the only facilities that I know of that you can guarantee that 100% of the golf balls are in the net are in Japan. And that's in the small area where they have a net literally over the top of the whole facility. And even then, golf balls are still going to get outside of the net, right? If a golf ball, as you're hitting the side of the net and it slides through a hole, that's a quarter piece and has enough power to get through there, it can still get outside of the net. So there will always be that opportunity in any facility across, I'm going to say the world, but we'll use the country for now. So yeah, I mean, that is a potential that is there. That is something that, you know, we strongly feel that we can put in a good effort to reduce that and make sure everybody's safe. Personally, I've been very happy or impressed by no incidents this summer, right? And we've had no issues all the way through. We did have a couple of issues before we put these into place. And since we've done that with Bill and his team, I've been very, very happy and pleasantly surprised. We have a good action plan in place. If somebody's treating the product not how it's intended to be used, we have signs up throughout the facility warning people that they'll be exited or excused from the property. So safety is our first and foremost thing that we're trying to do. You know, golf clubs are a dangerous product and a dangerous opportunity for somebody to get injured. So, you know, the lines that we have out on the facility and not making sure, and as managers are walking around and someone's in that line, we want them to step back so they don't get hit by a golf club. So there's a lot more safety aspects that we're taking than just a golf ball flying over in that net.
Need any further questions or discussion?
Not at this point.
Thank you. Lisa?
Hello, Mr. Rangat. I have a question for you in regards to your safety protocols with training of your staff members. My husband visited your facility and commends you and your operation. He did mention that your staffing is quite young. How do you address knowledge transfer and training of your staffers? What is a driver? What's a high impact driver? What's a basic club, et cetera, and so on? How would your staff even recognize when a golfer brings in their own, somebody here mentioned a $500 driver or something like that with that is a high impact driver? And who addresses that and how is that handled at both training as well as enforcement?
Lisa, can I ask for clarification? Because I think the only thing we were talking about in the past are drivers. So I don't know if there's a difference, say necessarily with the high impact and the how costly a driver is. I think it's only being able for the employee to be able to see the difference between a driver and a non-driver.
That's correct. We need to understand if employees are able to understand the difference and if they're able to call it out and enforce it when there is a difference.
Sure, I understand the question. So from a training aspect, as we onboard a new employee, we show them woods, hybrids, and irons. Okay, so you can interpret that however you want, but as a non-golfer, that's an easy way to identify. From a customer aspect, we got destroyed on reviews when we eliminated drivers. And so that was a little of an operational challenge to explain to the customer why we were doing that. And we've explained to the customer, and we still to this day, that it's ultimately for the safety of everybody inside and outside the nets, right? So we're doing that to make sure that we're being safe within the community. In the aspect where we've now implemented a hybrid or a rescue or I don't know how else to describe it, but that's what it is. It's kind of like an iron that is a little bit bigger sole on the backside. And we've implemented that, and 90% of our customers come in, couldn't identify a wood or a hybrid to begin with. And that seems to have resolved our complaint by not providing drivers. We are a driving range, and so customers expect to hit drivers. We've taken the approach that, you know, a golfer with a $500 or $1,000 driver knows how to golf, and they're going to keep the ball in the playing field. And that's why the targets are designed more towards the center of the range. So I'm confident with people bringing in their own equipment, especially higher end drivers, if we will, that they know how to maintain and control those. I think that most of our issues come from the non-golfer that is being aggressive and doesn't know how to swing or control that club. And so that's more of our concern than the actual golfer.
And a quick question on a statement you just made about the professionals who are using those type of drivers. The targets are set in such a way that you don't have concern of them going over the nets. What kind of liability or visuals or signage is in place that instructs transfer of liability or an intended transfer of liability to the golfer who is not adhering to target control?
Well, we do a lot of different things to try to go through that. So we have an acknowledgement form as they book a reservation that says that he or she and their group are responsible for their equipment, whether that's actually equipment that they're using or the golf ball. It's identified as a Wisconsin state law, right? If I hit a golf ball on a golf course and I break a window, I'm liable for that. Whether that chooses and how that works out is obviously a lot of the times it's an honesty policy, right? You hit a golf ball and it hits a house and breaks a window. Someone's not home, whether he or she tries to confront that homeowner. Sometimes I have a family member that lives on a golf course. He gets 5 windows broken a year at his house. 2 or 3 of them, yeah, most people will come up front and be addressed and open and honest, and it's taken care of. Back to your question, it's much more, so that's one protocol. We have signs throughout the facility. Every enter and exit out to the Bay Area states that, you know, keeping the golf ball within the net, and you're liable for your own equipment. And that also comes to damaging with the golf clubs as well. So it's definitely apparent as you walk through the facility, as hope some of you have, you can see those that are right in front of you.
On the booking statement with the transfer of liability or the acknowledgement of liability rather, do all participants sign that at booking, or is there
No, they do not. It's just the person making the reservation, and he or she is taking liability for their group.
Okay. I might have more questions on that as I think through that. My apologies, but that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Colleen, I saw your hand up next.
I'm curious, I'm not a golfer. I don't know how your whole facility works. If I hit a ball and it hits a car on the interstate, how do you know it's my ball? So I can be held legally liable.
I know exactly what bay it came from, what time it came from, and I have a camera system that tracks every 3 bays. So I know the time and the bay that it came from, and I can look back on the camera system and the reservation system to verify that person.
Your camera doesn't show my ball hitting the car on the interstate, right?
No, but I find that if someone's coming up to me, I can identify, I mean, again, we don't have a lot of golf balls that go over the net, so it's pretty easy to identify that specific time and day of when that would have occurred.
Thanks.
Thank you, Colleen. Doug, we're next.
Yeah, most of my questions have been asked already, but I do have a question for you. Do you have an estimate of what it would cost your business to come into compliance with this?
I don't know if I'm open, well, I don't care. The nets cost $2.3 million to build and put up and move forward. It would be estimated between $7 and $1.1 million to raise the complete nets. That's all the information I have at this time.
That's to raise them, not to extend the nets.
Coming to compliance would not be to raise them, it would be to extend them.
Correct. My understanding is it can't be extended because we're in the easement of ABS. They have a right-of-way road that was the whole original reason that we're at this particular point is because the guide wires that would come down would sit on the easement of the ABS right-of-way to their sign.
Okay, but to answer Doug's question, I hear your comment about the easement, but if that easement wasn't there, what would your estimate be, or what did you just say about how much it costs?
I don't have that answer. I don't know how much it would cost to extend them and dig down the poles. That would just be to raise the nets.
Yep, but the raise in nets, it was 2.3, is that what you said?
No, that was the total cost. I think it'd be anywhere from 700 to like just over $1 million.
Thank you, Ryan. Doug, did you have any further questions?
No, that's all I have.
Well, now I'm confused.
Colleen? Yeah.
If it was originally planned to be 75 yards long, that easement had to still have been in existence at that point. Now we're saying we can't go to 75 because we hit that easement, so we have to be at 72, but yet we always talked about 75?
Mark, do you want to answer that?
First off, I can investigate this because this is the first time I've heard this. The approved length of the range was 250 yards or 750 feet. Yeah, and then the actual built range was depending on where you measure to and from, about 709 to 715 feet or 236, 237 yards. I've got the as-built plans here, and this is a little hazardous, but there's 50 to 150 feet, depending on where you are, along the range between the as-built net and the south property line. We got a new element here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think you just didn't hear you because you.
Yeah, I just,
From your
Oh, I'm
mic.
sorry. Yeah, I minimally gonna make me do a scale here. I'm gonna bring it up on the screen.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put
See
you on the
it.
spot.
It's all right. Yeah, I do because I'm lost in navigation here. I'm gonna make myself a little hand scale.
Just as an aside, I just whipped out my handy dandy calculator when you had the golf ball numbers, trespass percentages, and I was getting the same numbers that were in that chart, at least for the June data. So it seemed accurate to me. Maybe it's neither here nor
The
there.
problem is that it says percentage when you look over in the left column. So if you do a percentage, you got to take that number and take 2 zeros off of it.
And I'm trying to do too many things at once, but we're not promising or proposing to require that there be no trespass over the net. And I think that needs to be clear.
Okay.
What we're suggesting as the performance standard, I'll say it again, is that there be no more balls over the net and onto the interstate travel lanes. So whether the number is 0.00002 or 0.002 is not material to the performance standard. So I just wanted to get that out before I went to the next thing. Oh, actually, Brandy, I'm sorry. I was looking for this as-built plan. Well, I might as well talk about this when it. So this was part of the submitted document from Pin Seekers. And now I can find it. Yeah, yeah. I'm looking for the as-built. I think it's this one. Yeah, as-built May 2024. So this is a plan that represents what is actually out there on the ground today. And just to give you some basis, again, here, the purple is the building. The distance from the building to the built south net is right here. It's at 709 feet. You know, if you measure to the corner, it's 715 feet. The distance, and then this is the south property line where you see all these numbers, and here's the ABS sign. Between the closest part of the net, really the corner, the southwest corner, and the property line, I'm scaling at about 50 feet. It's no less than 50 feet. And at the southeast corner, from the southeast post to the property line is about 130 feet. I wish I had the CSM that shows the easement on screen. I don't. Randy says she can pull it up, and that could show where the easement, that could show where the ABS easement is, I think.
Mark, those distances you mentioned are approximate from the pole, and there's probably guide wires or whatever on those poles.
There are
I'm
guy
guessing.
wires coming down from those poles, correct? Those are the wires. Hold it.
Yeah.
Toppling over.
Is that enough of the question answered, or?
Still pursue this issue, but it was a curveball we weren't anticipating.
My only concern is if 250 yards look good on the first time around, on the final development plan, but now it doesn't work because of this easement. Doesn't make sense to me, but that's my point.
Okay, thank you.
Why don't we loop back to that issue when we get the information?
I just want to clarify something though. Our focus right now though is safety, correct? Or any balls that would actually hit the pavement of the interstate that's what we're focused on right now. Not necessarily maybe them going south, but west onto the pavement. Correct?
Right. Well, go ahead, Al, you'll do a better job than me.
Yeah, maybe it would help if I kind of walked you through the analysis that the staff struggled with in dealing with this issue. and why we got to the point where we got to. You have in front of you a request for an amended FDP. You have three options under the ordinances. You can either approve it with conditions, or deny it. Okay. We looked at the benefit of denying it, which is basically you're going to prevent balls from going over and very few balls are actually relatively going in that direction over the fence. If they go over the fence, they're going to land in an open field where right now, at least, there's virtually zero chance of anybody being injured by those golf balls. So we looked at the options of either approving it as requested or approving it with conditions. We then looked at what is our concern? What is our biggest concern with the operation of this facility? And it was head and shoulders above all others, the west fence and the danger of balls hitting the interstate. So because of that, we thought, well, if we recommend approval, we can recommend approval with conditions. And those conditions can address the west side. So yes, there are going to be balls that will go over the south end of the facility. If you deny the request, their option is to extend the netting on the south side, which will prevent a few non-dangerous balls from going over the fence. Whereas an approval with the conditions that we were looking at should reduce the real danger, which is the western side. So that's how we got to where we got to in our recommendation, that approval with conditions we think is a much better option than denial.
Thank you, Alan. If I could offer some clarification too. If it was built the way it was approved at the Planning and Zoning Commission, there would have been no problem and we wouldn't be here tonight. But because there was a variance in the netting location, that is giving us that opportunity to explore this. Does that answer your question, Jean? Anything more?
Mine was just a clarification that the goal was safety on the west side of the facility so that it wouldn't, so the balls wouldn't go over onto the paved road.
Right. That was our primary concern at the staff level. The balls going over on the south side were a very minor concern.
Great. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
So
Lisa?
just, I don't have the CSM to present to you, but I do have it on my computer screen. I don't think there's any easement to the north of their south property line. I think the easement for the ABS sign is beyond that south property line. Extending the nets would affect the grading, particularly at that south west corner. You can see these tight lines that's where the grade changes. So there would need to be, in addition to the physical movement of the poles and whatever had to be done with the net that obviously is not going to stretch, there would need to be some site work to extend the nets further south, 45 feet or 15 yards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Related to that.
Yep, just trying to.
Sheet
remember.
1.3 actually shows the 40 or 50 feet of the guy wires on those corner posts.
Okay. Yeah, I don't, 1.3.
Yeah, it's S 1.3.
Oh, okay. Right here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Lisa, you were next.
Yeah, I have a question, Mark, because I don't have a plat map pulled up right now. What happens when we do approve a business on the south side?
Well, we go through the similar issue that we went through when the Cobblestone Hotel was proposed, right?
Yeah.
We take reasonable measures to keep people as far away as possible.
So the purpose of my question is that tonight we're not just reviewing a concern for the west side, then effectively need to consider that south side exposure as well.
If you care to, but we have the ability, we had it with the hotel to, ameliorate that issue on the south side.
Thank you.
But you're absolutely, you have the ability, as Al suggested, to say, no, build, deny, extend the range. If you do that, we may not have a good opportunity to address the more significant concern of keeping balls off the interstate.
Thank you, Mark. Anything else, Lisa?
Thank you.
Anybody else? I've got a couple I can ask too. So I guess I think this is a quick question for you, Ryan. I'm curious about the software that runs the screens. Are you have the availability to put in, say, splash screens, I'll call them, that will maybe bring in a warning or like something at the start of the screen that you could say that, hey, like what we said, you can't hit over the net or you'll be removed and stuff like that. Can that be an opening screen?
As of right now, no. Top Tracer is owned by Topgolf, and so they are keeping very tight to how their software is used throughout the country at individual driving ranges. Consistency, growing brand, whatever it may not. I've worked with Top Tracer for, don't quote me on this, but I believe 8 years now. Up until this year, with the privacy laws, we weren't even allowed to have customer data and information. So anybody that used a Top Tracer facility scanned in with the QR code, we didn't have the availability to have their even email. Since the last couple months, they've been able to allow us to access that. With that being said, hopefully there's ability to start to do like advertisements and local tournaments and awareness within that Top Tracer app. Very similar to like what you're talking about. Right now, it does not have that capability.
Okay, thank you. That removes a few comments that I had then. Another question I had is the, say, range balls that you currently have purchased. You know, what is an expected life of a range ball?
No, I really don't. I'm guessing there's a lot of different variables in there. I have 280,000 golf balls roughly in inventory right now. With that being said, we've started to pull out some of the golf balls that might have a cut or a scuff, or the brand that we use is starting to smooth out. There's lots of different variables that could get hit by a mower. It could be buried in the ground and we came up and it's been smoothed over as it's being washed and going up. There's lots of different variables into that. But now I've started to slowly put in new inventory, kind of getting ready for the winter season. To have a golf ball that's good for the player to hit.
Okay. I guess without you actually answer the question, what I'm sort of hearing is maybe over the course of 5 to 10 years, you'd probably have a rotation of the balls.
I would think it's less than that.
Okay, thank you. A question, I don't know who can answer this. I'll maybe address it to you, Ryan. I was looking at the engineering plans for the poles themselves. I can't tell you what page it was, but was the plans done by, good, I don't have the name in front of me, but the engineering company, they showed the details of the poles. And on a table, it talked about a pole height and then a maximum height. So what I'm interpolating from them is that say the base needed to be big enough to go as high as the maximum height. but when the poles are built, they weren't built to the maximum height. But going to that maximum height would only be adding the last length. It wouldn't be removing a pole and putting up a new pole, correct? Can you safely say that's correct?
No, I cannot. I'm pretty sure to raise the height of the poles, the base would have to be completely replaced. They would be able to use some of that, but not 100%. There were two options that were given to us to have future extension or to not. And I believe we chose not to have that based off of what our approval process was here, that we didn't think that we would get that approved to go to the 187 that was recommended.
Okay, so just repeating what you said, that if we would be requiring to go to a higher net length height, it would probably mean replacing all the poles or the poles where would
Potentially.
Yeah. Just a second, right?
I saw a note, I can't tell you what sheet it was, where it actually talked about future height extension.
That was the note I was trying to clarify, so
It was in the packet.
thank you. Thank you, John. One thing that I wanted to bring up that I was actually surprised, if you have the trajectory study, there was different, the ones that showed the arcs of the different drives. Yeah, if you can.
Okay.
I guess it's more for information than anything, but looking at the heights for the majority, if not all of those trajectories, they did. It seemed to be 160 feet at the height of the ball path, at least in whatever that engineering company.
I think that's it.
And I think another question for you, Ryan, is you talked about when you're explaining different things, how there's always the potential for a ball maybe to be driven through a net or something like that. And it's been a curiosity of mine, is what is the anticipated like life of the net, or how do you know that it, say, gets to the point of disrepair where it is more of an?
I believe it's warranted for 7 years.
Okay.
So if there's any fraying, breakage, anything of that nature, it's warranted up until 7 years. So the nets will have to be replaced at some point, yes.
Was that in your business plan to replace them when the warranty goes up, or hard?
Well, no, I mean, so the reason that the nets are designed the way that they are is they're in carabiner sections, right? So if you have to replace one section, you don't have to replace the complete nets. You can just replace that section. So it's designed like that over experience of time. And it's also based, I mean, that's on top of that, and you can kind of see it in the square sections there. Those are each individual carabinered areas. So in the aspect where a windstorm came through or a tree hit a net or something like that, you could take down that section and just replace that section on top of after the, I mean, with the sun and the weather and things like that, they'll inevitably have to be replaced.
Okay, well, very good to know that you can replace sections rather than taking on that whole cost.
Yes.
Mark, did you have the trajectory study up?
Oh, yeah. There it is.
It's difficult to read, that was one thing, but I think from what I could tell when I zoomed in on the PDF, it looked like it was hanging around like the 160. I like those max heights.
And I believe that that study is based off of a 2-inch T. And we're at 1.5 inches right now on the third level.
Yeah, and I say clarifying, I see the 3 blue lines over, say, on the left there. So that's teeing off of the third level. Okay.
Correct. So all that study is there is from the third level, which is the most important or the highest opportunity for risk.
Okay, I think that is everything I had on my points to clarify.
And then, sorry, the only last thing I would throw into this is you can see like a 9-iron, for example, which it looks like is a red or an orange there, sorry. Ultimately goes higher than a driver, just the distance is different.
And the angles too.
This is a question for anyone. Who's got 330 yards carry here? Oh, Al.
Mike?
I do have one other question for Brian. I had asked previously whether you had a consultant on board, and the answer, and you did.
This is from Dan Tanner, who is the leading consultant in the world for golf ball flight. The PGA Tour, the R&A, Top Golf, all use Dan Tanner. He's an 80-year-old gentleman. He does all the calculations by hand. He uses his recommendation as Top Golf has gone into litigation. He is also the expert. It's in there as well.
Okay. He also provided recommendations on range length, width, net height, et cetera.
Actually, Dan Tanner gave us the engineers out of California that have done, please don't quote me on this, but 50 or 60 Top Golfs. And so this was their recommendation. But yes.
Have you consulted with them on some of the issues we're talking about today?
Yes, we have.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We go back to the resolution on screen.
Mhm. Sorry, I'm just making sure that if there's changes, they get saved. Someone's got control of the keyboard. That's not me. You just put 23. You just save it as 723. Oh, you got a little crazy.
Colleen, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I guess if there aren't any more questions, I would,
It's change 18 to 23. Save, or I'll say save.
I would make a motion to accept the resolution with conditions and that our performance standard is no more balls on the interstate.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that into the microphone, Colleen?
I'm sorry. I would make a motion. Let me get my papers right here. To accept the resolution to amend the final development plan with the conditions proposed, knowing that our performance standard is no more balls on the interstate travel lanes.
So what I heard to clarify is that you're making a motion to approve resolution 2024-915 as written. Is that correct?
I would perhaps make a change under number 2 that there be no drivers, period, if that's reasonable.
You can make that as your motion and we can discuss that, or after there's a second.
That's that, yeah.
Okay. So I think that's in her motion. Is there a second to that motion? I'll second the motion and let's have discussion on what you meant by no drivers.
Number 2 says no drivers among the array of golf clubs made available to customers by the owner. Again, I'm not a golfer. I guess maybe I'm saying if drivers are a problem, no drivers, period. And for sure on that 3rd level. Is that where it is now? Just the 3rd level? There can't be any drivers?
Mark, do you want to answer? I can try to.
I'm just,
In the condition right now says no drivers available from Ryan or from pin seekers to the entire range.
correct.
But
So
you're,
people bring their
you're
own
not,
in.
right, right now, people can bring their drivers in.
Is it reasonable to ban drivers completely? Is it, I mean, I see what Ryan was saying earlier about if you're a good golfer, you know, that it's the lousy golfers that are hitting balls. That if you're a good golfer, you know how to control that, but I'm just wondering if that would help at all.
I would say as the seconder of that motion, I'm not comfortable with banning drivers,
Okay.
the entire range.
Third floor.
I'd maybe think about the third floor.
Third floor. There is, I don't know if that's,
Okay, well, let's put that in as the third floor, or I'd be amenable to that. We can have further discussion. I saw Lisa's hand up. Are you done with?
As part of the discussion, I was just concerned that prohibiting all drivers would significantly be a detriment to the Pin Seekers facility. It's a driving range. And so I for one could not support that initial recommendation that you made because it would be a detriment to his business and doesn't seem reasonable. The third floor seems reasonable with proper enforcement and controls to mitigate usage on the third floor on top of limitations on the third floor, I think is maybe a more reasonable approach.
I would agree with that. I don't want to be detrimental to the business. And like I said, I just don't know enough. But if the third floor seems to be the issue, then from the third floor, no drivers, yours or theirs. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, Lisa, you,
Could we bring up that ball? I think there were 6 pages on that PDF that Brandy just had up.
The trajectory.
The trajectory. To take a peek at that together again one more time, please. And maybe have a little more explanation on the third floor driver. I don't know if I saw a driver in there. Oh yeah, there's a lofted driver. Carrie, can we review that together one more time, please?
Lisa, what did you want to review about it? You just want to,
The distance of the carry for the drivers, just to make sure this is a reasonable recommendation to limit to take away the drivers on the third level platform. Yeah, that would be great, Ryan.
So what you're seeing here are a couple different things. You're seeing a driver at a 10.5 degree loft, which carries 280 degree or 280 yards. That maximum is, I believe, 161, it looks like 160 to 161 right there at a high point of about 150-ish yards. So it goes out to the driving range and then curves to the right is what we're talking about here, potential danger. So that's what you're seeing with a 10.5 degree driver with a tee height of 2 inches. So by reducing that tee height, and there's other things that we can do to help slope the ball from going down. So I would say, drivers not happening on the third level would be detrimental to my business. It will absolutely crush us. We will have complaints all the way through. I have leagues up there on the winter time that are in the third level. Those golfers are good golfers with low handicaps. And you also have to remember, if you're on the right side of the driving range or on the third level closest to the interstate, it is almost impossible to hit a driver and get it to that height that quick to go over to the interstate. So where you're seeing a golf ball actually coming over is from the left side or more towards the ABS side, and then they're hitting a golf ball and not controlling it, and it goes over to the right side of the interstate. So that is really the majority of the problem. It has nothing to do with being closer to the interstate. They're actually more safe in that aspect. There are other things where I would say like a 10.5-degree driver at 305 yards of carry, which I can't even do. I used to be able to. That actually peaks out at a height of a higher height, right? But at the end of the range, almost at 225 yards. So it's hitting that peak at 225. 99% of the golfers can't hit over 200 yards. So that's really a non-issue, but that's more of a tour quality golfer that would be hitting that height. And a 9-degree driver is even less. It barely hits over to that 161 yards. So by, again, lowering that tee height, you can do that a lot. There's another aspect that you could actually do where you can take a wedge within the mat and slope it down more towards the driving range, which will reduce that even more. So there are other mitigations that we can put into play that will significantly reduce that third level challenge that we're talking about, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Lisa, for pointing out the error in my ways here.
No, not at all.
No, I mean it. I'll withdraw that condition. I just didn't fully understand completely.
Let's wait a second and let Lisa finish because we have that in the motion, so we'll have to modify the motion.
I also had a question because you mentioned the left side versus right side and ability, the trajectory on that kind of diagonal. Is there a potential to limit platform usage on that third level as to what lanes are available for maybe your bachelor parties and the guys who are not paying attention to their liability waiver, right?
Guys and girls.
Okay, all right, yes, your parties of all types.
Yes, I would say there's a potential to do that. And that would be another step of us, complying to this amendment that we're talking about. I think of taking active measures to make sure that everybody's being safe. So yes, I would definitely say that. I would say it's very, very, I don't know how I would have guests coming into the facility and then having them check in and sending them to wherever they're supposed to go, third level, second level, first level, and they have their own golf balls. And then I'd make them take out their driver and have to put it in their car. I don't know how that would go operationally. It seems like it would be a big challenge, but to your point, I think that, with those certain parties and those things, we can gear them towards a certain location where it wouldn't be as much of an issue as it is now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. So, sorry, before we go back to that, we want to did you want to change the motion?
Yes, I will take out the suggestion that drivers should be banned.
Okay, and you're going back to the
Third level.
original motion.
I'm going back to the way the resolution is written.
Yep, and I, as a second, will accept that change. And then, Jean, were you next or was Mike?
No.
Okay, Mike?
You said something, Brian, that, let me ask if you meant that golfers can bring their own balls?
If I did it, no, they can't bring their own golf balls. I have seen people that hit golf balls out there. Let me rephrase that. When we're picking golf balls up in the morning and you find a white golf ball, somebody used their own golf ball, right? But when you find a Pro V1 out on the drive range, that's a $5 golf ball and somebody's hitting it one time, you're kind of like, well, it doesn't make any sense to me, right? So I don't know why somebody would do that in general. But no, it's just their clubs. Yeah.
Thank you. I had to ask.
Anybody? Mike?
I'd like the motion. I think it should stay pretty much performance-based as written. And certainly I can support that motion.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else want to state questions, comments before we go to vote? I think I've got all of my questions addressed. I guess I'm sort of looking at the room. I feel like we could do a voice vote, but we want to go to a roll call vote. Let's do roll call.
Works for me. Give me just 1 second, Jim.
Yep, I'll try to restate the motion, and that motion was made by Colleen, seconded by myself to recommend approval of resolution 2024-915 as written.
That would be your action, not a recommendation.
Sorry. Thank you for that clarification. Okay,
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. So we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Little,
I,
Commissioner Mancheski,
Aye.
Commissioner Brogy,
Aye.
sorry. Commissioner Straight,
Aye.
Commissioner Kellogg,
Aye.
Commissioner Wiersba,
Aye.
and Chairman Simpson.
Aye.
So I've got a 7-0 vote
Yep. Thank
in
you.
favor.
Thank you all for your time, and thank you for coming in, Ryan and Rebecca, John, and Bill too. Guys, have a good night. I think you're good. Thank you for coming too, Alan. Item number 5.2. Discussion and action on a resolution to approve 2 certified survey maps dividing lot 4 and 5 of CSM 16-431 within the DeForest Yards development.
This would be a reapproval of 2 certified survey maps you previously approved. They were approved with a condition that would have required the shared use of all facilities among 3 apartment buildings in perpetuity. Upon reflection and I think discussion with the financing people, the owner asked that that condition be removed. We did talk to the attorney who skipped town, and village attorney suggested that it's probably not an enforceable condition. So we're advising that the commission reapprove those 2 certified survey maps in DeForest Yards without that condition. You do have in your packet a draft of shared access driveway and parking easement agreement so that folks can in perpetuity move about the complex regardless of ownership of the 3 lots, but not to share fitness centers or other things that may be in one building and not the other 2. So,
make a motion to approve.
yep, thank you.
Colleen made the motion to approve as written the resolution 2024-913. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mike. Any discussion, comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Item 5.3, discussion and action on a resolution to approve a CSM dividing part of lot 1 of CSM 10957 located north of Highway V between Highway 51 and Ball Court. Mark again, or?
Recently, the village approved a site plan for a dental office on lot 2 of this area. This is between Ball Court, County V, and Highway 51. It's the north west corner of the interchange. The CSM would subdivide the lots, subdivide the land so that the dental office would be on lot 2, and then lot 1 would be made available for sale and further commercial development. The resolution in your packet would allow approval of that certified survey map. There are some conditions related to technical changes that ought to be made. I can report that under condition 1A, this is highly technical and I can get into it if needed, but the applicant will include 2 pieces of lots on the other side of Ball Court in a revised version of the CSM. They're outlots. There's a long story as to how they became to be in the report, but it's just a further update on condition 1A. So our recommendation is for the commission to approve resolution 2024-914.
Thank you, Mark.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2024-914 as written.
Thank you, Colleen. As she made a motion, is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Seconded by Shannon. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Item 5.4, discussion and action on a resolution to amend the project plan for the tax incremental district number 6, Village of DeForest. Is that maybe Alex?
Yeah, so a memo and the revised project plan are in your packets. I apologize. I just now realized that we were actually supposed to be holding a public hearing for this today, but it wasn't noticed on the agenda. So I'd be happy to talk about this now, but you're probably going to have me talking about it again at a future one, either in August or September. So given the fact that we've gone 1 hour and 45 minutes already today, I'd be happy to just either table this or I don't know what the appropriate action would be, but bring this back at a future date.
I guess we could discuss that because I don't know what's on our next agenda. I mean, it has been long, but typically we don't get anybody showing up at a public hearing. So I don't know if we have the discussion now or later, if it's really wasting time or not.
Totally your call. I'm happy to talk about it now too. But there won't be any action today, just to be clear.
Correct. Anybody opinion? Gene?
Yeah, it might make sense just to
Possibly.
wait.
Yeah. So I guess if we go without action, it will just continue on to the next agenda. Or if anybody wants to make a motion to table, we can do it that way.
I'd recommend a motion to postpone, table would mean to put it on the table, you'd have to motion to get it off the table and then take
Okay,
on the item.
I'll make that motion.
so motion by Doug to postpone item 5.4 to a future agenda,
Second.
seconded by Mike. Any I don't know if we can comment or not, but if there is any comments, questions, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item is, we will see on probably the next meeting. Randy, it looks like you're next with the item 6.1, rescheduling of November and December meetings.
Yep, so this is something that typically comes about as we start looking forward, that the holiday weeks fall during the planning and zoning weeks. So I'm looking to see if you're favorable for scheduling the November and December meetings on the second Monday of the month, which is the alternate dates for P and Z, rather than the fourth Tuesday of the month. And And those meetings will more than likely be via Zoom, because court has the rooms, on Mondays. So, yay, nay.
I would say I'm amenable to it. I just worry a little bit about Zoom if the agenda gets too long or not, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see as far as my concern. Anybody else want to raise concerns or care?
That's fine. With me.
Okay, thank you, Brandy.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, item 7.1, Chair's Report. At the village board, we did a resolution to vacate Lindy Lane that was here previously. There was a CSM dividing lands for Quick Trip that was approved. There's also development agreement talks with Cascade Development, which is better known as DeForest Yards. Some things with Pleasant Hill DeForest, I don't quite remember. We had the, what? Status of the village that Alex presented here, I believe, too. The status of the village tax incremental finance and districts was presented to the village board too. We started conversations about budgets. And then this one that I haven't marked up yet. Second amendment to the master development plan at Conservancy Place was discussed. And also the PDP for Conservancy Place was amended. And I will leave it at that. There's a few other things. Oh, we actually acquisition of the Baki Conservancy land and purchase of land along the Yahara River, say directly what it would be east of, say, Prairie Fire Court. That's everything I have, so. Back to our agenda, staff report. I saw Mike or Bill grab his mic, so I don't know if that meant you wanted to.
I was gonna clarify some items that you reported on, that's all. So the item on Pleasant Hills is the Bueller Farms subdivision that was assigned to Bueller Farms LLC. Financially and related to tax implications. So Bueller Farms LLC will be developing Bueller Farms subdivision, and it has to do with the development agreement and obligations thereof. You had discussed the PDP amendment for Conservancy Place and the developer agreement for that. It was an amendment from the current master development agreement to the second restated agreement, and essentially that provided an additional 233 residential units to the PDP, and in exchange for that, the village obtained 16.7 acres from the developer for a future park in that area. So this is just east of Sunfish Pond.
Thank you, Bill. Brandy, did you have anything more for staff report?
I do not. No, thank you.
Alex, anything for staff report? Site plan approvals or CSM approvals, Brandy?
None.
Anybody for development process and enforcement suggestions? Seeing none, our next meeting date is August 27th. I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Shannon, seconded by me. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? We are done at 7:50 PM. Thank you all.